Oh, welcome. I am here with none other than Clark Foley, ladies and gentlemen. Woo!
Hello, everybody.
I've known Clark for a few years. Never really professionally, more unprofessionally, like hanging out at bars, pizza parlors, things like that in downtown Troy.
Guilty as charged.
Yep, me too, man. But Clark has been around for a while, and he was at Mad Glory, which is a gaming company in Saratoga. Was it always in Saratoga?
So Mad Glory always was in Saratoga, yes. And that started in 2012 and was started by Brian Corrigan. And the really quick backstory, if that's okay, actually starts at RPI with Agora Games, which was a startup that came out of the RPI incubator started by Mike Del Preti. And he basically found a niche of the industry that was underserved for creating platforms for video games. So lots of developers were building new games and they were rebuilding tech every time that a new game came out for chat or friends list or presents or achievements and rewards. So his idea was to build a platform that would be reusable by multiple games, multiple developers, and it had a cool code name called Hydra because it reached out into multiple services and supported game developers to be able to launch faster so they weren't rebuilding things over and over again. So that's actually where I got my first internship, which was in the video game industry at Agora Games recently, or I should say right after they were purchased or acquired by Major League Gaming, which was basically an esports league and promotion company that would run in-person esports events back when everybody still had tube TVs and N64s and Xbox One the original Xbox had just come out. Yeah. So we worked on platform tech and also streaming web tech to do online esports tournaments before Twitch TV was out, before it was even started and originally called Justin TV, but we were using Flash players and streaming over the internet back in 2010 when, computers and the internet has come a long way in 10 years in terms of bandwidth and processing power. So we had some interesting challenges back then. But long story short, I worked there for 3 years with Brian Corrigan as the CTO. He left to start a new consulting company because he really wanted to work with this small game company called Riot Games that had just launched a new game called League of Legends, which, as we know now, is probably the most popular video game in the world. And so our first clients were Riot, doing web and client and platform tech for them. And then ultimately, over 7 years, we worked with Warner Brothers, Bethesda, Psyonix on Rocket League, and a bunch of smaller game companies too, mobile stuff. And we worked on one project with this other company from South Korea that had a game that was getting really popular called PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds in end of December 2017. And then fast forward the next year, we were ultimately acquired by PUBG. So we've been working on all PUBG all the time since March of 2018.
I'll be damned. How did that work with them? So they were a client of yours, and how'd you find them as a client? First of all, did they find you, or did you find them?
We reached out to them because, in the Mad Glory days, we were consultants. So we were hired guns for different game companies to come on and augment their development teams. So we'd work side by side with their team, but we were a contractor for a 6-month or a year basis, and we'd work on a multitude of different projects. So we had to do a little bit of selling ourselves, and I'm more of a project manager type person, never great at sales, but I could go out and network and talk to people at conferences and things like that. So we actually took a trip to Gamescom, which is, I think, the biggest video game conference in the world. It takes place in Cologne, Germany. And we, through a mutual contact, they said, PUBG is like blowing up. You guys need to talk to them, see if you can get any work with them. Like, okay, so we got the contact. And at the time, we were developing kind of a software as a service developer API. So it was a way, we were working with multiple game companies to make a way for outside developers to generate an API key and get verified game data from their platform to build apps that would help you analyze your gameplay, get your stats, coach you to get better at the game. And so that was our first project for PUBG, was working on developer.pubg.com, which was the verified data API. And obviously they thought we did a good job. And then they said, how would you guys like to work on only PUBG? And we said, sure. So
I'll be damned.
that's kind of how it happened, and it happened
That's
very quickly.
and I tell you, man, in my experience, that is pretty rare, especially cross cultural like that. So a
Yes.
South Korean company likes what you do so much that they buy you, and they're like, yeah, let's work. You're going to be like a branch of us over there.
Exactly. Yeah, we kept our name, so we're PUBG Mad Glory is our official studio name, and we
Hmm.
still work on some of the same things, but we've also branched out to doing a little bit of Unreal work. We work on PUBG.com, the website. We work on features in the game like weapon mastery and survival mastery, and we just launched ranked or competitive mode, which is a new matchmaking queue. So it's been pretty cool. And one thing I'll say about that, you mentioned like um, working with companies across the world. We used to think that we were really good at remote working because we worked from our office in Saratoga for companies in California or Texas.
Hmm.
And we thought 2 or 3 hours time zone difference was tough. But I will say, starting to work for a South Korean company, it's 13-hour time difference, which is
Yep.
almost the worst it could be because it's like never a good time in the morning and never a good time at night. And then
Right.
also there's the language barrier, which made
Right.
it like hard mode in
Yep.
difficulty level. So we've
Yeah.
gotten a lot
Yeah.
better over the last 2.5 years, though.
I understand that. Yeah. Do you have corporate meetings and things like that at odd hours that you got to join into? Okay.
We do. Yep. We have weekly meetings on Mondays and Tuesdays at 9 p.m. to do like kind of all hands meetings. Sometimes we'll have really early calls to catch the South Korean team at the end of their day. And then what makes it really interesting is we have a full-time interpretation team. So we have a team of like 15 or 20 people who their main job function is to translate emails, Jira tickets, PowerPoints, and then they also do like real-time translation during meetings. So I've been to South Korea where like we have different headsets on and I feel like I'm at the UN, like one person's talking and a translator's like whispering in this microphone and I'm hearing English while someone's speaking Korean, and then you go to say something back and then the
They
interpreter's
translate.
speaking to the mic back into Korean, which it makes you have to speak very slowly and think about what you want to say and not use slang or any bad puns because they usually don't translate. So
Yeah, I've tried to joke over in Asia, and it never works. Just
yeah.
never works. Oh, all right. Well, that's cool. And that you seem pretty rare on that. Have you been to South Korea a few times visiting?
I have. So what's interesting is when we were we were just Mad Glory working for Riot Games. We got invited to go to the 2014 League of Legends World Championships in Seoul, South Korea, at the
Mm.
FIFA World Cup Stadium,
Oh,
which had,
wow.
yeah, it was. They sold 40,000 tickets for the outdoor event in the stadium, and Imagine Dragons opened the show. There was a drum line of 100 like Korean drummers. There was pyrotechnics. It was the craziest rock concert I went to that wasn't a rock concert.
Yeah,
And so
that's nuts.
that was our first time going. And then we were kind of tuned in a little bit with the South Korean video game scene, which is huge. It's just
Yeah.
take NFL and baseball and basketball here, combine them, and that's how big esports is in South Korea. It's like their
Jeez.
national sport. It's wild. So then once we were part of PUBG, I've been over twice on two like week long business trips at our HQ there. So I
Yep.
love it. It's cool.
Yeah, I'm always curious to see because my theory has always been you usually don't get a deal done unless you can get face to face with somebody. So,
Yes.
were you over there like negotiating the final deal or like right beforehand, something like that?
So the funny story is that we were working on the first project, right, and it went well. And then before we knew it, uh, they let us know they're like, we're gonna actually send a team to do like a face to face. We're like, oh, cool, like one or two people coming. They're like, oh no, we're sending 10 people, and it was like the week before Christmas in
Oh,
2017. So it's snowing in Saratoga. Um, we had to find a place to go out to dinner with 20 people,
right.
and we had 10 people from Korea, most of whom spoke English, and
Yeah.
at this point, none of us spoke any Korean at all. Like we couldn't even say hello.
Yeah. Yeah.
So and it was very intense, but it was awesome. And then you know, right after the start of the year, we had 4 or 5 of us went over. I
Mhm.
actually stayed to handle the current clients that we had. Um,
Yep.
kind of went on like a 3-day trip to Korea, and the flight is 14 hours. So
Yeah.
the team went it was a turn and burn basically to get 2 days in the office there to talk about joining
Yeah.
the team and then to
Yeah.
fly back. It was insane, but it was a whirlwind. It was fun.
It's awesome. That's a good flight back, though. Like,
Yeah,
woo, we did it.
I think there may have been some soju happening on the flight. I
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I wasn't there, but I can guess.
Oh, that's great, man. That's great.
Yeah.
Um, I've always been curious, like, so in most of my classes, I coach about, if you're going to do a startup, how do you launch a product? And one of the first things you do with a new product idea is you go out and you talk to people about it. Like, I
Mhm,
don't know, here's, this product here. Like,
mhm.
you go out and you talk to, you don't show people the product. Typically you say, how do you, how do you listen to music when you're on the go, like that kind of thing, and try to get at, oh, I really need like a wireless, disconnected Bluetooth type headset. That would be great. Try to get at what their needs are. With a game, there's no need. I mean, there's nobody needs a game. I mean, you might argue, but like, there's no, there's, how do you figure out content? How do you figure out what product people are going to buy and know it, like going into things when you start?
Sure. So I think there's a couple parts to that, like specifically to address video games. I think a lot of people who are game developers or artists really have like a creative drive in them to
Mhm.
just to create because it's fulfilling a need for them. They need to express themselves. They're curious about different themes, different topics, and so they'll dive into artwork in if you like Assassin's Creed and like period piece, you're thinking about history, or if you like first person shooters, you want an action game or puzzle games, anything like that. I think it's kind of an organic process from game developers. And I think that's what can be frustrating sometimes. It's like you pour your heart out into something, and you're really proud of it, and maybe it will stick and maybe it won't, but
Yeah,
it's just that continual like getting better at it every time. In terms of being a startup, kind of like we were, but more focused on software development. So we always knew that we were trying to fill a need to the game industry that was underserved. There was a lot of people building games, but there weren't a lot of people building platform tech and
yeah,
supporting technology to make them work better online. And as online games, multiplayer online games specifically, got more and more popular, there's just always a need to scale it up, have it be more performant and run more efficiently. So at Mad Glory, we were consultants for other game companies doing bespoke work, whatever they needed, frankly. But every year we had a goal of trying to create our own product because we always knew that like it's hard to have an acquisition when it's you're only basically hourly software developers. It can
hmm,
only go so far. But if you have a product, like if you create Slack or Zoom, you have an engineering team, but you're building on a product, and everyone would talk about recurring revenue. So you want to try to create a product that has a monthly or annual fee to it, so that there's recurring revenue, and you kind of get the hockey stick effect where the more people you get onto it, onto the platform, you're not necessarily have to you don't have to build another widget for them.
hmm,
It's already available. Your variable cost of getting new people onto the platform is very small because you've done the upfront work, the fixed cost.
right,
So we always try to do one project a year. One of them, we used to use HipChat before Slack. So like it was a need that we had actually in our office to have a better internal chat system. So we built one from scratch. We called it Howlat. It did okay, but it never really caught on. We also had a product called Calamari. I don't know why we always have seafood type
yeah,
things,
that's
but
that's great.
um, well, because we were using WordPress a lot to build websites, but there were things about it we did and didn't like, so we kind of built our own. And we had a few of these products, and it was a fun exercise, and we did use some of the tech with our clients, but ultimately none of them really caught.
Yeah,
But the last one was a platform we called Game Locker, which basically refers to a way to store and save game data and your results from every match. And that's ultimately tech that we had been building for a year or more before we started working with PUBG. And
mhm,
we used some of that technology to build their developer API. And I think that's partly why we were impressed, because we had already done a year of planning and work before they started to work with us. So we were able
right.
to hit the ground running fast. Um, and that was what differentiated us from other third party contractor software teams that they had worked with.
Gotcha. But